Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Minister. It's clear that you're an experienced debater. I see a logical and an uncomfortable problem for you in the manner in which you're assessing the potential for voucher fraud. If you look at the logistics and the logic of voucher fraud, you have to have a voucher person who is a liar, and you have to have a vouchee, the person who's being vouched for, who is a liar. In order for vouching fraud to be of some magnitude, you have to have a lot of Canadian liars. So is it not the case that, on the other hand, is it not the case that really your default justification for assessing vouching fraud to be significant enough to risk disenfranchising literally thousands of Canadians, your default justification has to be a very, very cynical conclusion about the integrity of hundreds, if not thousands, of Canadians? They got to lie to do this. I just don't believe that Canadians are inclined to do that in the magnitude that your risk of disenfranchise suggests.
Do you believe people should have to continue to present ID when they cross the border?
It's quite a different situation.
But do you?
I believe that they need to, that vouching is a perfectly legitimate way to establish that somebody. I believe that vouching is a perfectly legitimate way to establish that somebody is a legitimate voter. Well, do you believe that signing that not having to establish that you're a Canadian citizen is sufficient to justify that you're able to vote? Because that's what you're saying.
Are you extending?
Are you saying that they should have a passport that should allow them to vote?
Are you extending
to prove that they're Canadians?
Are you extending the vouching provision to border crossings?
No. Are you extending the passport provision to voting?
Well, you just.
I mean, it cuts both ways.
If I could answer, he's answered my question now. He says no, he doesn't believe the vouching provision should apply at the border.
What I'm saying is,
if I could finish, Mr. Chair.
Many people who cross borders aren't Canadians. What I'm saying is, everybody who votes is, in your suggestion, that they're liars enough to be jeopardizing the vouching system. But I have another question.
Let's let the minister respond. Instead of this back and forth, each of you have an
he's
opportunity for a question and an opportunity for a response. Minister?
Well, the senator has said that he doesn't believe people should vouch to cross the border, that they should be able to provide identification, so he must therefore be accusing all Canadians of being liars by his own previous logic.
You haven't said that, but I'm just saying that in order for him to suggest that you need vouchers and vouchees, you have to have a lot of liars, and I have more faith in Canadians when they approach the voting booth than that. My second question is that that is related to this interesting ambivalence about the Conservatives towards voter fraud. On the one hand, they're concerned about it, judging by what the minister is saying and judging by his bill. On the other hand, every time voter fraud has arisen in some sort of judicial or investigatory process at a formal level, let's say Etobicoke Centre, let's say the robocalls investigation, the government, the Conservative Party, argues vehemently that it doesn't exist. So my question is, if you were really concerned about voter fraud, hacking into the Conservatives' database with millions and millions of names would seem to me to be a huge potential for voter fraud. And yet the Conservative Party and the Conservative government have made no effort to get to the root of who exactly hacked into their SIMS database in order to perpetrate or potentially perpetrate what might. So why isn't there something in their process of attacking and undermining and getting after voter fraud that would look at how it is that their database was hacked, and could that happen again in another election and create tremendous potential for voter fraud?
Mr. Chair, the question is about, I think he's referring to automated calls. The Fair Elections Act contains a requirement that all automated calls be registered with the CRTC, National Telecommunications Regulator. It creates a new offense for impersonations and increases the penalty for the existing offense linked to deceiving people about voting locations. So the Fair Elections Act does address the issue that the senator raises, and if he's so concerned about that issue, I would encourage him to support the bill.
We've got limited time remaining. I've got 4 senators at the moment on a second round, so I'd ask you to respect the opportunities that each senator on the list would like to have with respect to questions, and Minister, I would encourage you in terms of your responses so that we can get as many in as possible, and we'll begin with Senator Baker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a note at the end, the Minister referenced the provision in the bill regarding reporting to the CRTC. Unfortunately, the bill says that these records, absent the necessary information of who was called, will be kept for 1 year. But you will recall, Mr. Chairman, we passed the last change to the Canada Elections Act that gave a 10-year period for prosecution of summary conviction offenses under the Act. And this would now, getting back to the robocall thing, that's what my question is, or any other offense for which, or possible offense or suspected offense for which the Commissioner will be investigating. And the Minister is right, the Commissioner is separate from the Office of the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. Now, the Chief Electoral Office has asked the government to put in a provision to assist in the investigation of the robocall matter and other matters that involve possible offenses under the Act. And the provision is to enable the Commissioner to have the same authority that a Commissioner has under the Public Inquiries Act. It's the same authority that most commissioners have, most chief electoral offices have in the provinces in Canada. The Auditor General is investigating the Senate, soon to investigate the House of Commons, I imagine. And that Auditor General has the power of a commissioner under the Public Inquiries Act. That is, to go to a judge in a particular case where he can't get cooperation and get a court order. That's what's done in most investigative situations of authorities involving auditing and everything else. He's not permitted to do that here. I agree with you, police officers don't have that authority. They don't. But that's a different context. If you get somebody in court, they've got to answer. This is not the United States. You can't plead the fifth. You've got to answer. But in this particular case, it would facilitate criminal investigations. And why not give them, in Canada, the commissioner, the same power that most of the provincial commissioners have to investigate, and the Auditor General of Canada has, and that is the power of a commissioner under the Public Inquiries Act.
Well, this is a power that police officers do not even have. Even when they are conducting investigations with complex evidence and fact situations and uncooperative witnesses, they do not have the power that Elections Canada is seeking for itself. What Elections Canada does have, to clarify, the Commissioner does have, is the ability to go to a judge and seek a court order to produce documents and physical evidence. That exists right now. That is quite distinct, and that's what police officers have. Yeah. That is quite distinct from the power to compel testimony, which is not presently available to either police officers who investigate the most serious crimes imaginable, or to Elections Canada.
No, I understand. Yes, okay, Mr. Chairman.
Senator From.
I have to begin by commenting that I'm surprised that Canadian banks bother to lock their doors at night, given how I've learned from Senator Mitchell that we don't have any dishonest Canadians. So what a waste of effort on their part. Okay, sorry, I know we're, okay, that was, I just had a comment there.
He wasn't asking you.
Senator Mitchell,
on a different
please.
topic. On a different topic. The Chief Electoral Officer has claimed, Sheila Fraser has backed him up, that this bill will muzzle him, Section 18, and he's gone so far as to say that he will, after this bill is passed, he won't even be able to give interviews on CBC radio. Can you comment on whether or not he is muzzled by this bill?
No, he is not. The section in question is 18, and the bill focuses the CEO's advertising power on the basics of voting: where, when, what ID to bring, and what special tools are available to help people with disabilities cast their ballot. The bill, as it will be passed, will not confine speech. It will relate to his advertising and promotional powers under the Act. And not only is the CEO allowed to speak, he is required to speak under, I think, Section 533, 535 of the Canada Elections Act. He's required to provide written reports and to testify before Parliament. Those obligations will remain with the passage of the Fair Elections Act.
Senator Jaffer?
Mr. I again want to ask you a question on vouching. During your second reading speech in the House, you said, and I quote, "The reality is that vouching is not safe, it's not secure. After the Fair Elections Act is passed, it will not be allowed." My question to you, Minister, is what research or study did you rely on to come to that conclusion?
Well, there's obviously the case that we heard before the Supreme Court, Opitz versus Yasneski, where the court commented very extensively on these issues. There was also the enormous number of irregularities that occurred in the last election, 50,735, which is an extraordinarily high number.
Were they all vouching?
Yes, though, well, actually, no. To be fair, there was 165,000 irregularities in the last election, a really astounding failure on Election Canada's part as the administrator. 50,735 of those were linked to vouching. And of those, 45,000 cases, we don't know the names and of the voucher and the voter. So those are a very large number of irregularities. You know, the fact that the author of the report who found those irregularities is himself a supporter of vouching should raise even greater concerns among all of us, because it shows that this was not a report produced in order to achieve a policy outcome, but it was written to show the facts, and the facts are that there were serious problems with vouching in the last election.
Senator Batters?
Minister, we've heard you say that there were 165,000 serious errors and 50,000 irregularities in that 2011 election administered by Elections Canada. Because that's such a staggering amount, I'm just wondering if you can tell us what in particular those errors pertain to.
Well, I can get the summary of the report. Someone might have it with me. But there were vast errors in the registration process. As I said, that there were 50,000 related specifically to vouching, but I can provide the committee with the summary of the report in which those serious errors were found. I don't have it on my person right now, but
That would be very
it is public information.
Thank you.
Last question, Senator Joyal.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Minister, there is an uncertainty about the capacity of either the House or the Senate to improve on the bill. Is it your position that this is the Bible, we should not even consider changing anything, or even in the context of the objectives of the government to assure fairness? Or is this a fair and open parliamentary process whereby we can question ourselves or how we could best come with proposals that would support the objective of fairness?
We'll have to wait until the committee, the House committee, I think, presents its proposed amendments on the 25th, and I don't want to comment on those amendments until I've seen them.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Minister. We appreciate your appearance here today, along with the officials, to help us on our consideration of the legislation. Members, we're back here at 1:30, and our first witness is the Chief Electoral Officer. Meeting adjourned.